Hello and welcome to another edition of For the Record. I'm Shawn Murphy. My guest today, JB, welcome to the show, by the way.
Thank you very much, Shawn. Appreciate it.
JB in the afternoon, he's a wild man on the air. If you ever get a chance or if you have already listened to him, very entertaining stuff. First time on the show, I appreciate it. Let's talk about the man behind the microphone, JB. Let's talk about how you kind of got started. Let's go way back before your radio days. What's your background?
I am a retired Connecticut State Trooper, joined in January of 1987. I went 20 years. At the 20-year mark, I was forced to retire because of injuries I sustained. I got hit by a car May 29th, 1991, and then I re-injured myself in March of 1996. So based on the rules and regulations, if you're not 100%, which means if you can't go on the road in uniform in one of those marked cars, at the 20-year mark, you have to sever your service.
So you can't just go behind a desk or anything like that?
No, and I was actually in an assignment as a fugitive investigator, so a lot of my expertise came in fugitive investigations, which only a small part of that actually end up being the time and place where you're going to try to effect the arrest.
Right.
So even despite that particular assignment that I was in, it didn't preclude the rules.
Is that something that you were upset about? Did you not want your career to end at that point?
Oh, I would still be.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, the radio is in effect for me an extension of my job.
It allows you to vent a little bit?
I can vent.
Yeah.
I can listen to what people say. I could take calls from people who have a misconception of law enforcement or a misconception of, why the cop walked up to the passenger side instead of the driver's side. What's going on in a police car when you see a car that doesn't have his lights and siren on go flying down the left lane of 95. And then I have a perspective, real life perspective of the crimes, the arrest process, the court process, the prison process, and then of course how that kind of folds into the progressive process that we are trying to live with now in the state of Connecticut.
Well, we'll continue on with the progression of your career, but since we're talking about law enforcement, I'll ask you, in your opinion, what's the state of law enforcement in Connecticut these days, in your opinion?
Well, it's a fundamental thing, Shawn. We have a government in Connecticut now that is not police friendly. They are a very liberal, progressive mindset, which means they're more focused on the cost of keeping a prisoner in prison as opposed to the severity of the crime they committed and the fact that there should be a rot factor. They should be in the place until they are removed, not necessarily on their own, but perhaps feet first. And they, instead of looking at ways to house prisoners less expensively, we are coming up with these crazy programs. For instance, in Connecticut presently, if you are incarcerated and you attend an anger management class, you potentially can earn 5 days off of 30-day sentence by attending the class. If you go to the history of the Philippines, that goes towards a 5 days off, 30 off a prison sentence. So you end up with, for instance, a facility in Montville that they built for 24 of the sex offenders less likely to re-enter that realm of career. One of them that just got booted out of Norwich did 23 years for 14 rapes. Now, my position on that would be, and I offered, because I am a retired state employee, I offered Governor Malloy on the air, gave our number, of course, to call in. I offered to drive to Hartford and review files of incarcerated sex offenders in an attempt to find 24, based on my experience, that I felt were least likely to recommit their crime. Because as I refer to on the radio frequently, we know when an alcoholic falls off the wagon. We see them drunk. We know when
it's pretty obvious
a heroin addict is back on the needle. So with that in mind, the only way that we know that a sex offender is back into it again is that there has to be a victim. And I don't want your children or my children or anybody I dislike to be that person. So that's why I feel strongly about the fact that, we have 3 prisons that are closed right now. They've emptied them. They pride themselves in the fact that they have come up with programs and instituted them to take these people that would otherwise be in prison and therefore 100%. And I know that more statistics are something that prop up the progressives in their attempt to get their agenda.
Well, for anybody that uses statistics, it helps their argument, whatever it is they're
right,
arguing.
and you can skew statistics. We've just seen
crunch the numbers
in New London that they have reported per annum in 2012 that crime's down because they compared traffic tickets to robberies and sexual assaults. Well, if you put it all in one bag and then divide it by the number of violations, of course you can skew the end result.
So you're talking about prisoners. I was just reading this morning, the Corrigan prisoner who doesn't have to eat fish now. They have an alternate menu for him. He even got PETA involved, and now he doesn't have to eat fish.
He is a 275-pound man that is allegedly a vegetarian based on his religious beliefs, and he sexually assaulted a 14-year-old girl. How long has he been a vegetarian? Did that just kick in when he started serving his sentence? And how the hell did he get to 275 pounds if he's a vegetarian? I mean, the other thing would be, again, my perspective as someone in law enforcement who actually was on special assignment with the FBI and tracked fugitives around the world. The problem shouldn't be whether or not I want to eat fish sticks. If the meal is fish sticks and you're in prison and you don't want to eat them, then trade them for a cigarette or wait till tomorrow and hope it's not fish sticks again. I mean, it should be easy.
Right.
It doesn't seem to be that way, though, because we kind of acquiesce and suddenly, who's the prisoner? The prisoners earn their way. We have a facility in the north central part of the state that is so airtight that there is a huge cannon that they draw air into to get it to where the prisoners are.
That's pretty secure, huh?
It's an extremely secure prison. We should have a prison like that full if we have people committing the crimes that earn their way in there. And we do. The abolition of the death penalty, I think, to me, again, I have children. I grew up in a strict home. I understand risk-reward. If you step over the line, then you're going to get clipped. If you step over the line and you never have to realize a clipping, then what's the limitation of how far you're going to go?
Absolutely. Let's get back on the JB career path now, yes. And you'll feel free to express yourself in any way. All right, so you left law enforcement, and what happened next between then and by the time you got on the radio? I know as far as radio goes, you started out as being a caller and being a guest before you actually got your own show, but take us after the law enforcement aspects.
I still remain a participant. As I mentioned earlier, I did fugitive investigations. While at the state police, I went on loan on a 90-day program, which was federal, state, and local law enforcement put together in a task force environment in New Haven. The task force was operated by the FBI, and all we did was fugitive investigations. So that 90-day assignment went 10 and a half years. And so while I was involved with fugitive investigations, I got involved with the National Association of Fugitive Investigators, which is a nationwide organization of cops whose primary function is to lock up bad guys. And I ended up on the board of directors and the co-chairman of the board of directors. So I stayed involved with law enforcement through that aspect, as well as becoming a law enforcement analyst.
They kind of presented that to you. Did you? Is this something that you had to think about? Did you ever think that that you might be a person that's on the air, a broadcaster himself? It gave you an opportunity. If you were a man who had a lot on his mind, I would think that this would be a great opportunity for you to sort of vent. And I'm sure there's some like-minded people out there that agree with you. But did you have to think about it when they presented that to you and said, "Wow, can I do this? Do I want to do this?"
Well, as you know, it's quite a task. I credit people that have been in the business for such a long time, and the only thing that I think you guys have done wrong is make it look so easy.
Well,
because it's more than sitting behind a microphone and a control board and 3 computers and then a transfer box to get the calls up on the air and then making sure that the calls come off the air or or hit a 7-second delay button when inappropriate stuff is spoken about.
Yeah.
So all those things going on at the same time.
Smooth. That's got to be smooth, too.
And it has to be.
Add in the fact I do a morning show, so try to get up that early and go to bed early the night before,
right?
And be in the right frame of mind to do it.
Exactly, and I think it causes me to focus more on issues, and again, it's almost by way of an extension of my career. I'm still able to speak about law enforcement from my experience.
Do you tell people on the air what your previous career was?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, everybody, that's pretty well known. My FBI experience is pretty well known. The fugitive investigative aspect is well known. And I think that it does the community a great service if you actually have somebody in the business telling you what's going on. When you read something in the newspaper about somebody that's arrested for disorderly conduct, or even failure to appear in court, or taking a vehicle without an owner's permission, and how that differs from actually stealing a car. All those things that can very easily become misconceptions with the public, based on maybe 1 or 2 experiences with law enforcement. Getting a grumpy guy that throws his $300 ticket at you and then says, "Have a nice day." It gives me an opportunity to kind of set the record straight on a lot of things that go on, and it gives a perspective that isn't commonly available.
I know you talked about the technology aspect of it. Is it what you expected it to be? Is it so far since you've been doing it what you've thought it would be? Are there surprises? There always are, right?
It's been overwhelming.
Yeah?
The positive response has been absolutely overwhelming. The emails, as you mentioned earlier, the ways that you can get radio on the different applications or streaming a signal live. It'd be nothing for me to get an email of 2 or 3, 4 emails during the show saying, "I'm listening to you in Poland right now."
That's
which
awesome.
happened last week.
That's awesome.
"I'm listening to you in Italy. Keep up the good work. We appreciate the opportunity for you to let us know how things really are." And the gauge to me, Shawn, is when I have a whole bunch of ex-cops or current cops, street cops, that email on a regular basis.
Your peers.
And then I hear through the grapevine, to the same degree in the opposite direction, that police administrations are wild.
Right.
Because I'm speaking for them. I'm saying things that they can't say. And thankfully, for the First Amendment, they can't come at me.
Now, it's great that you have fans and you have a lot of people that like you and your show and agree with you. But with that said, if you just have a love fest on the air and everybody agrees with what you're saying, it's not much of a show. You kind of need some people that will disagree with you and argue with you and have a view on the other side for it really to be something that people would want to tune in and listen to.
That's a great point. And we don't, as some of the other national shows, we don't have call screeners. I mean, everybody that calls, for the most part, gets through. Now, we've had to clip a few people in respect to whether or not they can come on the air, but it isn't. You do have to, in a conversation with people, as you know, a portion of it has to be listening, a portion of it has to be talking, or it's not a conversation.
Right.
So for us to not take the other side on a lot of issues, and there are people that have had legitimately some bad experiences with cops. Most recently, the situation in New York City with the cop on a bike that harassed a motorist. Those things happen. It's a black eye. It hurts tremendously, me personally,
right,
to come on and see somebody that's done that. It's a bad situation.
And you don't necessarily defend them. You just kind of give your point of view, right?
No, and you can't. That's indefensible.
Right.
The guy should get locked up. He should get locked up for a long time. To have participated in such an event and not try to either walk away from it and alert somebody in a better position to take care of it, or start fighting for the motorist himself. Again, it's a perspective that will never condone bad behavior in law enforcement. But also, when I say that, the focus cannot be, and I think sometimes, I don't know if it's natural, if it's because what we're exposed to on a 24-hour news loop, but because one cop that wasn't in uniform that did something really bad in New York City doesn't make the other 55,000 NYPD cops bad. It's not. It's like any organization, I suppose, in radio broadcasting. You know, we all have those folks that.
One bad apple.
Exactly.
You
It's
know?
it's right, and it shouldn't reflect modern times. And as we started at the top of the show, Shawn, where are we right now with regard to how law enforcement is looked at in society? And I think it does trickle down from the highest authority down to the town. And right now, it's easier for some progressive mindsets to emphasize the cost of policing than it is for justifying making sure that the cops are supported wholly. There are plenty of factions that continue to emphasize what happened on December 14th last year in Newtown, Connecticut at Sandy Hook Elementary School for the purposes of making it about the instrument that crazy guy used to kill those kids, as opposed to the fact that there should be implements put in place immediately to make sure or to try to lessen that happening again. And I've spoken to Congressman Joe Courtney. I got one telephone call as a result of an outpouring of calls that his office got relative to a show that we did and ideas that I brought forward, having spoken to a bunch of my colleagues, a bunch of retired troopers over a beer, and ideas that as dads and retired cops that we thought could be easily implemented at the schools, December 15th. And what's happened is that responsible school boards and police departments in their own communities have done what they can do within their resources. And I'll chronicle one police department that I talk about all the time, it's Stonington, which includes Mystic. In that school system, what they did in every school is they put a work area for a cop, so that when a cop, rather than just ride around all day in between calls, he actually has a place where he can go to each school in the community and sit down, because the federal law precludes any police officer, unless he is on assignment, from being in the proximity of a school. So that means an off-duty cop or an off-duty state trooper has to stay 12 to 1,500 feet away from a school, because it's a gun-free zone, as indicated by President Bill Clinton.
I would have thought law enforcement would be the exception to that rule.
Well, and one of the programs that I put forward is that, look, retired cops are dads.
Right.
Retired cops are husbands and bill payers. That's where we all kind of, when we're given an opportunity to speak, what we say kind of rings true. We don't have our own language, per se, that eliminates those opportunities that exist. And we put forward a plan that would allow cops that go through specific training to go into schools in soft clothes, just be the dad in the hallway. A lot of us know most of the kids anyway, so the high-fiving is already there.
Right.
But in that situation with Sandy Hook, where schools are gun-free zones and soft targets, if there was one more person between the front door of a school and the classrooms where the kids are or the administrators are, that would have made a big difference.
I want to, before we run out of time, and if we have time, we can go back to some stuff. Are you a news junkie, a political junkie, social junkie? Do you watch a lot of it?
I'll tell you what, Shawn, in the 8 months that I've been on the air, I don't think I've watched TV 3 times.
No kidding.
Now, obviously I live in the area here, so I commuted to New Haven by and large for 11 years. And then after that, it was State Police Headquarters up in Middletown. So I've always been in the car for at least an hour. So back from about 1989 on, I became someone that listened to talk radio. So in an effort to stay up on what's going on, I guess I kind of was a radio junkie that converted it to somebody that had something to say.
Right.
That converted into someone that still has something to say,
right. And you have
from
your
the
own
other
show.
side of the mic.
Right.
And it's interesting.
And can you handle like the hecklers or those who vehemently disagree with your point of view? You probably welcome them to come on or call just so that you can have a conversation, right?
We do. I think that I have one banned caller in
right?
8 months.
Wow.
That would just incessantly come on and just make statements that were just patently not correct. So as I refer to it, my 2 hours of precious radio time,
right.
I just cannot get dragged down. And then when you have somebody call up emailers that say, geez, could you please have that call and make sure he comes on after 5:30 because I eat dinner between 5:15 and 5:30.
There you go.
So we try to be considerate to everybody.
Right. And you're a man who doesn't hold back. You know, you'll call someone, you know, a rough name, not a swear, but you'll be, if you have to, you'll be mean, you know?
When I read stories, and again, to some degree it pains me to have to read stories statewide or nationally involving horrible crime and young victims. But I do. And in my way, and scumbag actually
And that's the word
doesn't
right there,
come
by the
from
way.
me.
Right.
It comes from John Walsh. With my affiliation with the FBI and working on fugitive investigations, I became very friendly with John Walsh from America's Most Wanted.
Right.
And he refers to the scumbags as scumbags.
And he has a vested interest in, you know?
And he does. And his story is, he comes to my conferences, and his story 27 years later doesn't get old. And every time he tells the story, there's not a dry eye in a place. So you have 500 cops that listen to the story of how Adam Walsh was kind of pushed out of a video arcade at a mall with a bunch of troublemaking kids and then abducted. It was horrible, and there's an example of someone that was motivated to be involved with helping and using the public or utilizing the public, which we do. You know, because I have a law enforcement background, I speak to cops every day on the air about things that are going on. We're able to, with social media, between our website, Facebook, etc., we can put photographs of suspects up, and you know, having someone listen to it. Sometimes I believe when you don't have the visual, it may sink in a little bit deeper.
Keep doing what you're doing, my friend. You're doing a great job, so thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being on
Appreciate
my
it.
show today. And thank you for joining us for another edition of For the Record. You can see this show on our YouTube site as well as many others. Until next time, I'm Shawn Murphy. Take care.